There it is. What's going on out there, everybody? This is Samuel Leggett here. Got my man Lucas here. We're back for another spoiler review for Lovecraft Country, episode 3. I'm not gonna even say the title because it's blasphemous. It's blasphemous.
Well, yeah, that is they are really digging deep into these titles that make you wonder, like, wow.
Yeah. Okay. But let's just say it's of biblical proportions when it's not nothing biblical about anything in this episode whatsoever.
Not even in the slightest.
So, yeah. Matter of fact, I don't even think faith is even brought up. I take that back. Letty brings up.
Well, the beginning of the episode actually is in the church.
It's in the church, choir singing. Is that Uncle George's funeral? Whose funeral is that? Is our mom's or is that Uncle George's? We don't know.
Hey, I'm assuming the mother because we hear her sister's voice. Ain't her sister's voice in the background?
I thought so.
Yeah. So we get glimpses of her mother's funeral, but not of the main character that they killed. Nope.
Yeah. So just to give you guys transition, the last episode, Uncle George got killed, and he died from blood loss in his brother's arms. After which, during that time frame in between when they was having conversations together, it was alluded that Atticus may not be, his son, that it actually may be Uncle George's son, which makes sense why we saw the hallucination that we did with this other woman. But we didn't know that at the time. Mm-hmm. So then that pivotal, heart-wrenching moment when Atticus goes to the car and watches as his Uncle George is dead in his father's arms, they transitioned over to the church scene.
And that's one of the most powerful scenes of this season for this show. And boy,
it was.
They moved it out quick.
It was. I even thought that the actor that played the role of Atticus, I could feel the hurt on him. He did an amazing job with that specific scene because he doesn't know it, but that really could be his actual dad dying. Mm-hmm. And it didn't change the hurt that he felt. You know what I'm saying? And I thought that was a very powerful moment. I know we're talking about the third episode, but I thought that was something we couldn't talk about the last episode. The last episode was some trash. Other than certain things. Certain things, we just didn't go there. But then they fast forward and Letty has come up on some money. And she has bought this house that looks effectively haunted. And it actually is haunted. But she moves forward anyway. And she decides, I'm going to bring my sister in. I'm going to make it a boarding house. I'm going to make, there's something thriving for the African Americans in the neighborhood. And this house, it takes place in a predominantly Caucasian neighborhood. Mm-hmm. So, from the grounded side of stuff, if I took the horror elements out of it, it was kind of interesting. From the standpoint that I was kind of like, oh dang, like okay, you came up on some money, but this is the 1950s. Like, I'm surprised they haven't burned the house down yet. The moment they found out that you were going and moving in, but instead, what they did, they kind of just like pestered her. They kind of like said snooty comments up until it got to the moment of the party. And during that party, a lot of different things happens in the party to Letty and with Letty. But one of the most interesting, kind of powerful things is that they have been honking their horns back and forth, but they effectively put all their cars in a line, had bricks on the windshields. And the funny thing that I liked about that moment was that all of them knew what they needed to do. They were all in their P's and Q's. They were like, all right, you get the bat, you get a gun, everybody was ready. Yep. And then the moment that the police came, they were like, hide the guns, you trail it out of here, hands up, did not. They knew. It's kind of like during that time, you can imagine from Jim Crow and from marches and different stuff, they knew what it was. You know, they knew what they needed to do and what they had to do, even in that neighborhood, which I felt was really powerful. I love that. But then we can't escape the other side of this, which Lucas is going to get into, of the American Horror Story of all this. So proceed on, sir.
So, with this episode of Lovecraft Country, we switch from something we thought could be a committed show to American Horror Story presents Lovecraft Country, or The Twilight Zone presents a random episode of Lovecraft Country. This episode feels so separate from both of the prior two episodes. Now, again, second episode was trash, but it's almost like they threw out the first episode too and just said, hey, this is a new show. We're going to drop you into this episode and not going to explain to you where the money Letty got came from. Why did she pick a house in a predominantly white neighborhood? Because all of this should have been given reasons for this. We're just going to drop you into it and drop you into the middle of a ghost story. And then we're going to use the analogy of ghosts to deal with also white people. And we're going to put it both together and give you this story that, again, the narrative here is a lot clearer than it was in episode 2. The execution just is just as sloppy as it was in episode 2 here. And it doesn't do everything to explain it to you, but it has very powerful set pieces in this episode. Very powerful moments in this episode that you just wish they could live with a little longer. That's all you wish. When Letty wakes up out her sleep, is woken up out her sleep by a ghost, and she goes by the window, and she's burning hot, and she lifts the window up to get a relief from the heat, and the first thing she hears is the horns going off again. That is such a powerful moment for that time period, and just a microcosm of everything that a Black person attempting to live in a predominantly white neighborhood would have to go through for peace. Because it was just at that point, she couldn't get peace from anything and anywhere. But she just knew she was right. And that's another thing they should have really drove home this episode, is that Letty was like gung-ho on, I'm living here whether you like it or not. Like I'm American, I'm an American citizen. I've done what I need to do. I got the money. I'm living here. I'm not choosing to be in a neighborhood full of my people. I want something better. But they don't do a good job of telling you any of that. You just got to go with it by looking at her.
Yeah. It's like what they did was they added in her. It's hard. It's a positive and a negative. They injected a lot of the horror elements of the house and the surrounding theme of what's happened in that house, that even though she came up on some money, she got into this house, she finally has a house. To even have a house as an African American and you own it and it's yours, that's powerful. But even the house that she owned had dirt. Even the house she had a terrible stench on it that she couldn't put her finger on, but nobody else saw but her. And she was seeing things happen. And that's what made it very terrifying for me personally, because I was kind of like, this reminds me of some pretty dark stuff. But at the same time, when you do that, you focus so much on that, you lose part of the central core of her stance of why she really wants it, no matter what, regardless of the horror element, regardless of the ghost, regardless of whatever demonic situation that was going on, she wanted to stay steadfast on that. And it wasn't just because of her selfishness. It wasn't just because of the things that she felt guilty about. It was deeper than that. But the way that they kind of perpetuated it, with even that scene with Ruby and her sister, it was kind of like, oh, well, she put herself in this situation. She's selfish. Like, she doesn't really care about anybody. And like, if I took what her sister said at face value, that's what I would assume. If you're not paying attention to the small moments, you're going to miss a lot of what is good about this show, which is sad. The issues that I had when it came to some of the horror elements of this, I'm going to go to this picture right here, because it's just nasty. Just even looking at it. Here we go. Go back to it.
Trying to guess which picture you're going to use. I knew it. I knew that was going to be the picture.
Look. When I seen this joint, I was like, "Oh Lord, no, nope." And this is the weird thing about it. I was kind of like, every single one of these different ghosts that I'm seeing, as weird as they are, as messed up they are, they look maimed. They look tortured. They look like, somebody had did something to them just so heinous and harsh that it's like they are restless as much as Letty is restless. And it's like, I kept on putting that connection together. I was like, bro, like by the end of this, like she's going to be as messed up as whatever happened in this house. And sure enough, it is. Now, what messed me up though, of course, was the look and the visuals and the practical effects of the way they made these things look. But when they decided to bring their own witch doctor in, or whatever she was.
The goat cutting.
And this lady slit a goat's throat on the porch. I was done. After that, I was like, I don't play with that kind of stuff. Like from a spiritual standpoint, I personally know. And from that moment until they got, even when they were in the basement, whatever was being said, whatever was going on, whatever pivotal information, I had it on mute. Or either I was looking away. I was like, bruh, no. Because it wasn't until a specific scene where at the end, the tail end of it, when Letty first off, Atticus got possessed, the lady got possessed, but I didn't know that it wasn't the African Americans that were possessing them.
Yeah, they didn't make that clear.
It was the person that did all these hardest things, the Caucasian man that did all these things to these people that was doing it. He was the darkness. And I thought that was really trippy, but they'd already lost me. I was already like this. I was like, no. I mean, first off, the episode name is Holy Ghost. You got in the front yard, and I already showed the picture, is like a burning cross. And then all of a sudden, like we got all these things, is a trickle down effect that when they got down to the basement and that was going on, I was like, bro, I was out of it. I personally was taken out of it.
Was it with Letty and them in the basement or the kids in the basement?
So I'll go to that picture real quick. So they were in the attic.
At the attic.
That scene, you know how I am, man. I'm old school, bro. You already know. I don't be playing on no Ouija boards, bro. I was told that a long time ago.
I don't know who. I've seen this in multiple movies at this point. I don't know a single person who has ever touched a Ouija board.
It's like, what are y'all doing, bro? And go ahead.
I'm about to say, even though, granted, I remember those being sold to kids. I remember the commercials with the Ouija board, and I remember my mother saying, "Ain't no way." And blank, 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 something like that is coming near my house or near my kids. Like I remember this type of stuff, but it was just a weird episode. Again, I understood the moment they brought the witch doctor in to cut the goat's throat and use the blood to like guard and protect the house. In my mind, all I was thinking of was, wow, if we're doing all of this, couldn't we just brought a pastor in to bless the house? Couldn't that done the same exact purpose?
From that era, wouldn't it have been?
Yes.
Wouldn't it have been like, yo, Pastor Frank, you gotta come in. We gotta plead the blood of Jesus over this place because it's some
especially since they haven't shown anything from anyone's past in the first two episodes that would suggest a witch doctor would be the person they would go to.
Yeah,
we haven't seen anything of that nature.
Yeah,
we haven't seen anything of that nature that's saying that will be the route to go. Like you got to make that known. Like these are kind of their beliefs. But then again, I said about the music selection in the first episode. While we're going through everything in the basement, you have the unmitigated gall to play a gospel song while they're doing all of that. And I'm like,
thank you.
Why are you playing the gospel? So we could play a gospel song, but we can't have like God be the person that like help us out. And we need a witch doctor. It's again, and these are little nitpicky things. It's not, to me, it's not overly big, because if I just look at the story, I'm still going to have these same issues of just the way they progress these characters and the way they skipped everything to do with the past episode. But just the way they progressed these characters, it didn't make sense. Letty was making decisions in this episode that seems like it's a completely different person than we met beforehand. Now, they're trying to say the ramifications of what happened has changed her.
Yeah.
Okay. We can try to go with that. But in all honesty, she becomes a little bit more forceful at times in this episode. And then she'll revert back to being meek again. It's like, who are we getting here?
Yeah. Yeah. Because even, like I said, during the party, Atticus, in my personal opinion, Atticus is just being extra for no good reason. Like, it's evident he has feelings for Letty, and I don't really know what he was trying to do. He was kind of put up a front, like, yeah, stay away from me, or I'm leaving. I'm not gonna say because I'm mysterious and I'm brooding. And then, like, you know, she's dancing around with somebody else and talks to another dude. He was like, yeah, I got up in that or whatever. And then they just pursue to have sex. And then you find, and it's weird because when she did what she did, I was like, she's not on her period. Like, this is her first time. Like, I was like, I knew instantly. Yeah. I was like, because everything that proceeded after that moment, I was kind of like, yeah, she seems distraught over that. And he didn't catch it, which added to some of the good parts about this episode, which is her unraveling mentally. Like, she's completely unhinged. But then by the end of the episode, she gets back together, you know.
Oh, it takes no time in Lovecraft country. Everything gets back to normal real quick.
It's weird because there's a lot of shows that do this. Like, I think True Blood did this, and a lot of other shows did, where traumatic moments happen and you see the different characters where they kind of interact with those moments later on in flashbacks or certain fleeting moments, but it's never this residual bleed over. And it's kind of like, oh yeah, everything's cool. Bruh, like, if I live what they lived through that house and through the vampire incident, I would need therapy, bro. Yes. Like, it would be no way. Like, I don't care if I'm African American in the 1950s, bro. I would be messed up. I would have to be talking to people because I would question everything. You would question what is real, what is right. You know what I'm saying? Like, that would be the moment where you would be going to church more often than not. So for the fact of where this went, it just, for me, it took me out of it, you know, just because of my beliefs. And from a spiritual standpoint, it's just way too much for me. I think it was just kind of like added fluff. But when I recall the moment with the kids in the attic, and we talked about this last episode where they found out it was Uncle George.
Yeah.
I was like, wait, what? Like, what are they saying? And then the mom, yeah, it was this episode. The mom found in the room the solar system device.
Yes.
The door opened by itself and presented it to her. So I assumed, because it didn't feel demonic, it didn't feel dark, it felt like Uncle George was trying to point her to something. But then, man, by the 5th episode, she does something stupid. And I'm like, what was the point of this, Uncle George? What you do, bro? Like,
listen.
We'll get to that later. That's neither here nor there. But as far as the episodes can be, what disturbed me was, like I said, like the reinforcement on this spiritual overtone, but with nothing spiritual whatsoever. It was the complete opposite. They had exorcism stuff. They had voodoo stuff. They had, demonic stuff. But the sad thing is, it was like this infused injection of white people are bad, or white people are the catalyst of
without
this.
overly going, with not explaining the full detail of the neighborhood she's in. They just give you hints to it. Again, I said I wouldn't bring up the source material ever again, and I'm not going to, because again, I just threw that in trash. But they don't do anything to explain, like, okay, why did she pick this white neighborhood? Hey, even worse yet, explain in the 1950s how a black person can own a home in a white neighborhood. Like, you're not going to explain any of this. You're not going to explain anything to her at all. Yeah. And we're just going to get thrown into this story. We're going to get thrown into these situations. They make some very odd decision choices this entire episode. Atticus, her sister, like everybody makes odd decisions in this episode on the way they move in life. And it just throws you off so much. But again, it has a lot of powerful imagery in this.
It does.
Like that scene in the basement, through all its huge flaws, and there's lots of them, that should have been a great scene of you breaking a demonic possession. Could have been a great scene of that. Instead, I am super confused about what the hell happened.
Bruh, I assume that from their oppression and their situation that they stood together and came against their oppressor, from against the grave, and empowered her to do that from ancestors. I don't know, bro. It's just way too much. It was way too much, and it didn't have to be that, bro. I didn't even hear what would happen. I didn't hear what they were talking about. I didn't hear the situation. I literally just watched a single moment, and I was like, okay, this is all I'm going to get from this. And I'm moving forward. Again, we talked about this, that each episode feels like it's on an anthology. Mm-hmm. And it feels completely different every single episode. And some people might like that. Some of you guys might like that this is very disconjointed and different. But again, we're going from this from a narrative and a story standpoint. It is frustrating. It can be very it can be very frustrating. Even it's weird because there, like Lucas said, there are some powerful moments. There's some powerful scenes, and some of those moments pay off later. But then some of them are just fleeting and just unnecessary. Because the only thing I'm going to actually visualize from this episode and remembering is this lady cutting the goat's throat on this porch of this house.
And they made sure to focus on her cutting the throat. And I'm like, that's not what you need to focus on.
Like literally this right here, this shot right here should be the only scene that I should be literally looking at and being like, wow, that is a powerful moment in the context of it. That is the scene, that is the shot that I should be like, yes, wow, that was a powerful.
It's a big shot. That's a big shot to pull off.
And even the moment before when Atticus was talking about leaving, and like, these people started like threatening the house, and he was like, no, you know what? I'm gonna stay around. And they all are on the porch together. Mm-hmm. That is a beautiful shot. You know what I'm saying? Like they're not, trying to fight back. They're not even holding their ground. They're like, this is my property. Like, I'm allowed to be here. That's a powerful thing. But I don't know, man. Like, I think it's like a push and pull, like blending these different things in the way that they're blending them. It might be causing more harm to the narrative than helping. Yeah. And then the end, which we didn't talk about, the end, you find out that the elevator, and that still doesn't make any sense. The house, of course, has the ghosts of the African American people there, but the elevator goes down into this. Well, never mind, we can't talk about that. We're gonna find out until the next episode.
Because it goes into the next episode.
Yeah, but the white people that got killed in that house, go down to the elevator by the end of the episode, which that leads into the next episode, but it doesn't make a lick of sense.
Yeah, because they don't fully go and explain to you anything about the base. Like, it's... This is the frustration with this show. Completely the frustration with this show. It's just the narrative nature of it is so confusing, and it doesn't have to be confusing. And it's like, I don't know if they're trying to spotlight each actor, because if we go forward without saying anything about the next two episodes after this, they're all spotlight episodes, though.
Yeah, they are.
Yeah, they're all spotlight episodes. So I don't know if the point right now is they feel they have involved you enough in it in the first two episodes, and now you get the spotlight episodes on these characters. But unfortunately, they make some of the dumbest decisions humanly possible. They don't explain. Like, we get to see Atticus coming to Letty's party in full uniform, but it's not fully explained. Hey, the reason he is in full uniform is so when people drive by, they see a soldier. Instead, we gotta wait till somebody at the party
says something,
brings it up, and I'm like, you could have just explained that right when they were on the porch, when everybody was around, and Atticus said, "I'm gonna stay." It could have been said then.
Yeah,
like, man, we need to put a plan, something.
Yeah, and we talked about this the last. We talked about this even in the first episode. Is that they throw stuff at you for you to go and internalize what it actually means, as opposed to really just blatantly just saying it. And it's like, normally, certain movies, that's intriguing, that's endearing when it comes to movies. But when it comes to this kind of show that has so much, you're going to have to make it plain. Some of us, you're going to have to make it completely clear what's going on so people don't miss the intimate, important moments. Yes. And the reason why we're bringing this up and we're talking about it, because the show does have potential. There's a lot of things in this that have the potential of being really good, but they have to execute it in an efficient manner. Again, cinematography-wise, is good. As far as some of the acting sometimes is very good. And again, powerful imagery is very important. That means you had an idea of the way this shot should look. That's good, but it has to be flushed out in a very delicate way, so you don't lose out on the longevity of people's impression of the show.
Yes.
So, because it's like, from a view standpoint, consumers are going to probably be talking about this joint every week and probably going crazy over it. Like, Black Twitter, oh man, I shouldn't have said that. Twitter is going to be going crazy every week.
You said it right. You said it right.
Twitter is going to be...
Black Twitter can't wait for this show. This is the show Black Twitter has been waiting for, people.
They're going to be going ham on this show, and that's going to create enough buzz from a social media standpoint to keep this show relevant, and that's good. There's nothing wrong with that. But what could Watchmen is only one season, one limited series, but that show, even if I talked about it 5 years down the line, will still have the same exact longevity impact from the way that they executed it, from the way it's so iconic. And even if you didn't like some of the choices in the third act or whatever from the superhero element, it still doesn't lose its potency. People will never forget what they got from that show. And this show could do that. And maybe things might change after the fifth episode. I don't know. But from what we've seen so far, they're catering to a certain kind of audience in the way that they're executing this. So we'll see. But as far as this episode is concerned, it wasn't as bad as the second episode by any stretch of the imagination.
No, nothing could be. I don't think anything could be that bad.
And I think it had a lot of really important imagery, and I think it had some good moments, but it just lost me from a spiritual standpoint. And a lot of the decisions, a lot of things that were in it were just unnecessary to me. But what's your closing thoughts, Lucas?
Just as an episode, again, this episode changes the pace of the series. This episode kind of lets you know at this point that just expect stories that are semi-connected but not overly connected.
Yep.
Your expectations at this point are gone for this to be a great series. At this point, you know what you're getting. You're getting an okay series, an okay showcase at times for some very great directors, cinematographers to work, and some solid acting performances, but everything won't be pieced together well. That's what you get by the end of the third episode. Again, embrace the importance of some of the moments that happen in this episode because they are
Yep.
really big. I wish they would have taken more time to embrace those moments, but they don't. But so as an
Yep.
audience, we got to embrace them. The main shot with the cross burner on the lawn and all the black people as the police pull up on the ground with their knees. That is such a powerful moment that should again be drilled into your head. Unfortunately for me, what has become drilled into my head is not the goat thing like with Sam. That's not the one. But now I get drilled into my head just a funny looking ghost before they fully form the ghost, as they're just doing something as Shirley Caesar is playing in the background. That's not the image I wanted to have for this episode, but that's what I'm stuck with for this episode. At this point, you just want them to choose better moments. Better moments for you to be stuck with than they're choosing in these first 3 episodes.
Yeah. And I mean, we didn't bring up the ghosts. One of the things, there's some ghosts that from a practical effect standpoint and from the way they did the costume work, I thought they did a really good job with. Some of them were just off. And I'm not sure if that's because some of the stuff that we saw is not completed VFX. So I don't know. I don't want to gauge that too much. But there was 1 or 2 ghosts that I was like, this is terrible. And I'm talking about the one specifically, the baby basketball player.
That's what I thought with the little baby head.
Bruh, I was like, and the bad thing is it looks funny, but if you really gauge what really happened to these 2 individuals, that's terrible.
Yes.
I mean, they literally took a African American baby, cut his head off, and put it on a basketball player. Like that's sick. Like that's what
I mean. That's what I mean by living with powerful moments. Like they've made the issue, and again, I hate to constantly say the Watchmen, but there's always going to be the comparison piece with the Watchmen. The Watchmen use the racial issues as the main element and the superhero stuff as the backdrop. What we thought Lovecraft Country was going to do is use, again, the racial elements as the main point and the horror elements as the background, but instead they have flipped it. And now the horror elements are forefront. But when you do horror forefront, you cannot have a serious subplot behind it. The racial tension is way too serious of a subplot to put behind horror. You have to put that in front of horror and let the horror play off of it. And instead, right now, the horror is playing first, and the racial tension is playing off of the horror, and it never is going to work that way.
Yeah, I completely agree. And we'll go into more details because Lord knows this next episode. Anyway, we'll talk to you guys a little bit later on. Till next time. Hope y'all enjoyed this spoiler review. Peace, guys.